Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Well, greetings and happy Wednesday evening, Thanksgiving Eve to all of you. Welcome to the program. I'm Scotty Roberts. I'm your host. I just walked in, so I got to get my coat off. Hang on. And I'm glad that you are here tonight. Thank you for coming to the program. And it's Thanksgiving Eve. How do y'all feel about that? Do you like the holiday? I love the holidays. I love Thanksgiving. I love Christmas. I love all of that. But there's the one thing that keeps coming up, especially this year, since it was an election year, and that's how do you get along with your family and those that might differ with your opinion or want to start political fighting at the dinner table on Thanksgiving. Or it doesn't even have to be at the dinner table. It could be over football. It could be anything that's going on politically around you. And does somebody want to create strife or a problem? Or do you anticipate having some kind of a problem? Because some people are going to want to express their opinions, and it's going to start problems. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight, and I'm going to have some pointers. Maybe even I've got 10 points buried in there somewhere that we can look at to try to figure out how to avoid these kinds of problems on Thanksgiving when you're gathered with family. And there are probably principles that could extend far beyond just the Thanksgiving table. It could be all the other things that we do in life and the different people we encounter. I was just out. I just came back in from being out with a good friend of mine of many years. And we went out and had a couple of pints tonight and talked about some stuff. And we never talked about politics. We're on different political ends of the spectrum, or different ends of the spectrum of the same political, whatever. You know what I mean? We're vociferously different. But you know what? Doesn't prevent us from going out and having pints and talking about old times and complaining about what it's like becoming an old man versus the youth that we once misspent together in various forms over the last 30 years. So we had a good time tonight. And we didn't even broach politics. Now, could we have? Sure, we could have. Could we have kept our tempers? Yeah. But there's one thing I noticed. I was listening to just a little clip of, who was it? It was Alec Baldwin and Sharon Stone were making some comments. They were out of the country. They were at a film festival or something. And they made some comments the other day about how uninformed, unintelligent, and dumb the American public are. Alec Baldwin said something about, we want to know, but we don't know anything about politics. We don't know anything about Israel. We don't know anything about Ukraine and what's really going on. And I wanted to stop and say, wait. So you're saying you are the person that does know what these things are? He was asked, and he answered that by saying, how do we do that? We do it through entertainment, by the movies and the shows we present you. Oh, so portraying imaginary characters in fictional settings is supposed to inform people more about what we are dumb about. That's what I got out of it. That's what I gleaned out of that. So maybe one of the things to start doing is realizing who you get your information from, where that information is sourced, what is the bias point. What do we say when we're talking about, we just brought this up last week, about talking about the context of ancient texts. When we go through ancient texts, ancient stories, sometimes it's, well, all the time, it's good to know what was the context about what was being said and what was the context in which the people who those documents were originally written for thousands of years ago, what was the context that they would have understood within that contextual setting. And so there is always context when it comes to understanding what you believe, why you believe it, what you're doing, where you're going to go from there with it, and what you're going to share with other people. And there's my 9-year-old on cue. I've started radio. There's Ellery. Hi, Ellery. What can I do for you? Familial interruption number 1. Hi. What's up? Quick, because I'm doing radio. Nothing. She got her hair cut today. Yeah, there you go. Okay, thanks. Bye. I love you. See ya. All right. It's time for us to continue on. There, look. Oh, look, you're woefully off camera. Bye. And you can hang out, but you got to be quiet and uninterrupted. So that's the kind of thing that, do you plan on talking about politics at the dinner table tomorrow for Thanksgiving at Grandma's? No. That's the best approach to take. Just say, it's not something I'm going to talk about. But what do you do when it comes up? That's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. Do you have to be dishonest and say, I don't have an opinion on that? How do you approach these things? So the question is, and I love seeing Professor Bauer out there too, because we all have what we believe is a corner of fact or truth. We know what we're talking about. We want to talk about it. So the first thing I like to do when I listen to people talking politics, especially in a familial setting, is what's your starting point? Where are you getting your information? I have members of my family that hated Trump, absolutely hated him, didn't want to see him in. And when I would ask why, they didn't want to talk about it. They just wanted to state their opinion. Don't ask me to validate my opinion. Well, I said, seriously, what are some of the things that bother you about him? And the first thing they brought up was something that was so innocuous, I didn't even remember what it was. And I said, you're basing your hatred of Trump on that? Do you understand what that story really was? Do you understand what really happened? Do you know the context of what happened there, of what happened with the people around him? I need you to either be here and be quiet or go in the other room. I love you, but don't just be here to make noise in the background. Thank you very much. That's not a news flash. Okay, I love you. See ya. Bye. And so let's continue on. That is something I hate, making my little kid feel bad, but they know I'm doing a show here. So sometimes it's okay. It's like, if you see me talking, don't come in and just dance in the background and stuff. Let's wait for the appropriate time. Same thing with broaching political opinion when family's around. If you know you've got differing opinions or that people are going to think differently than you, choose your opportunity, choose the time rightly to talk about those things. Be able to share and talk with people in a way that you know is going to get you somewhere. There's some people that just like to stir the pot and make trouble. Why would you want to do that in your family setting? Why not save family for being with family and enjoying the time rather than finding ways to get everybody pissy at each other about your political point of view? Doesn't matter what side of the spectrum, end of the spectrum you're on. You take a drink. So, by the way, familial interruptions come with having a studio in the house. And no locks on the doors or no studio lights saying on air. So it's kind of fun. I'm okay with having my kid. But when I give them subtle hints because I'm in front of a radio audience, I give them subtle hints of, hey, we're doing show. Okay. Thank you, sweetie. You can come back later. And they don't take the subtle hint. You got to stop things and get them out. So there's either a hard, fast rule of you don't do this or you do it and you got to read dad's hints. It's that simple. All right. We'll leave that at that. So tomorrow, Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving time. I think sometimes, as an aside to the main topic of the night, I think we forget what Thanksgiving is about, just like we forget what Christmas is about. Maybe for some of us, we haven't forgotten what that's about. We just have a different twist or a different bent or a different path that we follow. For many of us, it's all about just getting together, spending the time, having a holiday to share with each other. For others, there are reasons. I like my kids to know why. Why do we have Thanksgiving? Why do we have, and I could ask them now, they could come up with a somewhat halfway baked answer about, something about the pilgrims and stuff like that. And I say, well, let's understand. It's like the 4th of July. Do we understand why we go out and shoot off fireworks and go to the lake or get on somebody's pontoon boat or watch a parade or whatever it might be? Or has the meaning been lost? So I think as we celebrate the holiday tomorrow, it's not a bad thing to say, again, without being preachy or sing-songy or everybody's silent now while I talk about something important, the meaning of Thanksgiving. It's not that. It's being able to say something to the effect of, I'm so glad we're all here. I'm thankful we're all together. I want to start something. Let's go around the table. Say what you're thankful for this year. Let's be thankful today. What's on your minds, everybody? Or what are the things that you're not so thankful about? What can we do? And that's the way family works. I think that's the way this holiday works. We're going to my mother-in-law's tomorrow. Just be a handful of us there. I got to be honest and say I really miss my old family's holidays. My mother she's been down in Yuma, Arizona for 20 years. We don't go down there for holidays. When my grandfather passed away, 30 years ago now, he passed away. That changed our holidays forever. He was a big factor that held it all together and made it a big family thing. And then the same year, my aunt, my mom's sister, died. And so it kind of all fell apart after that. Everybody started going to the other families if you were married. And our Thanksgivings became, my mom kept the tradition going. She always had something. She'd invite 50 friends over to her house. She'd do a big spread. I remember once setting up tables at her house so she could have 50 people there in the house. Folding tables in the kitchen and spilling into the dining room, into the living room. It was pretty amazing. My mom enjoyed doing that. Loves having a party. And so what does it mean to you? What wars never have them on Turkey Day? What? Field guy says, what wars never have them on Turkey Day? Or are you saying what wars? Question mark. Never have them on Turkey Day. So yeah, maybe. Some people don't. And I don't recall my family ever having anybody ever getting uptight at anybody for their political points of view. How many bathrooms did she have? At that time, only 2 in that house. So, yeah, it was a zoo there. But she always did a great spread. She was like a gourmet chef and loved cooking and would still do it now. She's 82 now, and she's like, I'm going somewhere else for Thanksgiving. So I love putting on the spread, probably more than Rainey does. Rainey doesn't like cooking for a bunch of people. Even if it was like 10 people coming over for Thanksgiving, that's not her thing. I love doing that. I love the prep. I love putting the stuff together. I love having the people over. I want to this next January. have a Burns dinner, which we haven't done for a long time. Robert Burns, the death of Robert Burns in the late 1700s. His friends all started getting together the next year on his the not his birthday, but the anniversary of his death, and having these dinners with his poetry, with singing, with haggis, with bagpipes, and all of that. So I've done that once, and I'd like to do it again up here. But you can only house so many people to do something like that. So it's got to be like 10 of your closest friends to your family, or you personally. So I like doing that kind of thing. We used to have a pub in our house, Rainey and I. And this little pub, we took the basement downstairs, which was a finished basement in your typical ranch style or rambler style house, one story, but this had the finished basement. And down in the finished basement was a bar that the previous owners had put in. And Uncle Dave and I, back in 2006, Rainey and I took over that house when my mom moved to Yuma, and we lived there. And Dave and I, we took that downstairs bar area, and it was all panel, the cheap paneling that goes on the walls and cheap carpet down on the floors and all that, and the sprayed pebble ceilings, stuff like that. So it was nice down there. And it had a big finished bathroom down there and walk-in shower. And so what Dave and I did, we took all that plywood, rather than strip it off, I plastered over the top of it to cover up all the grooves, and made it look like old plaster that had aged. And I did theatrical painting to it to make it look aged and a little cracked. And we got beams, big 6x6 beams. And we put them every 6 feet down there, up and down on the wall, these big beams, and put them across the ceiling, and put a few diagonals in from the wall to the ceiling, hung lanterns, put paintings up, put a bar rail all the way around the room. And we made that old downstairs with the bar look like something out of a pub out of the 1500s. And we had good times down there. We did scotch and cookies down there for a while, as a matter of fact, on Thursdays, and did parties down there and all of that stuff. We loved having people together. So what do you do? What do you do? I have never really had too many gatherings in my house or my family where anybody has gotten into arguments. And I hear that that's so many people this year are talking about that. But that's because you've got some of the most vocal people out there are complaining still about the outcome of the election, and thinking that the election is something to be really sad about, and can't understand why everybody else isn't angry and sad along with them. And those are the people that are trying to govern the narrative once again, and still trying to govern the narrative. And that narrative is, you're going to get into fights with your family. Well, not necessarily. I think it's like I told my own kids. They were all yelling at each other and doing. I said, you know what? Stupid people get violent over dumb matters, small matters. I said, smart people work their way through it, talk their way through it, and make it work. That's what I tell them when they're fighting over something dumb like a pair of shorts. Those are my shorts. No, they're my shorts. Happens every day around here. Daniel Craig says, my grandfather had a full tavern in his basement. Bar, tables, Tiffany lights, the works. It was amazing. In our recent kitchen remodel, we threw in a kegerator. Not exactly the same. Well, yeah, I like doing that stuff. When Rainey and I would love to take this house and put a new tavern, a pub in here again. If we end up building a house, I want to build in a special room that is a big room for a tavern, a bar, so we could have friends over, do things. Maybe not a full tavern, meaning maybe we're not charging people. In Wisconsin, you can actually do that. You can start your own little pub out of your house. You got to get the license and all that, but you can do it. So maybe that's in the future too. So let's get your thoughts in the chat room. And also, let's talk about this politicking at Thanksgiving dinner. What's involved in that? Should you even engage in politics at Thanksgiving dinner? Um, and there are politics of Thanksgiving. And as families start to get together, they gather for the holiday, for Thanksgiving dinner. There's lots of people, and some I know, friends, acquaintances, family members who are worried about how they're going to handle an extended meal while maintaining a conversation with their family members who voted differently in the 2024 election. Oh, shocking that you might have members of a family that vote differently. They don't all think the same. And so if there's no ground rules going in, will there be an acrimonious fight if politics are discussed? If everyone agrees not to talk about the election results, or who they preferred, or if I don't talk about what a dumbass Kamala Harris is and how worthless and feckless she would have been as a leader, will the elephant in the room create a tense, artificial atmosphere for some of my family members? There's a couple of them that went that way. And so is it too late to call the whole thing off? No. And I don't think you have to. Post-election angst cuts across all ages. I've seen it in my own family. I've seen it when I was in ministry. I saw that happen. The day after the election, a 5-year-old girl drew a picture of a stick-figured family with a sad face on her mom and a smile on her dad. Simple story. They're fighting all the time. Fighting about the election. An 80-year-old called in tears once to tell me that her children and her grandchildren had just told her that they weren't coming to her house for Thanksgiving. They said, "We need a safe haven and there will be too much tension." What a bunch of, pardon me for my editorializing, what a bunch of mamby-pamby little pussy-faced idiots. I can't go see my family because I need a safe haven from my family's politics. Oh, please. And, frankly, I don't have any problem with that. If I went to a family member's house and they were big Kamala Harris supporters, if they wanted to talk about it, I'd gladly talk about that, but I wouldn't hold it against anybody. I might say, well, here's my reasons for thinking why I think the way I think and why I think a vote for her would have been stupid. But you're my sister and I love you. Or you're my dad. I love you. You're my mom. I love you. I don't think that's any big thing. So why would you stop seeing your family members because they aren't the safe haven from my raw emotions from the way the election went? Now, I've been grappling with how to think about my own Thanksgiving dinner. How to talk with all the people around me. Well, grappling is probably the wrong word to use because most everybody in my family and Rainey's family voted the same way I did. Could there be discussion? Yeah, we could get into discussion. I'm sure there are people that might be there that thought the other way. But as we think about the guests around the table, I'm not even sure how everybody voted. But I'm not going to poll people to find out. But I'd be lying if I didn't confess feeling a bit on edge sometimes. I wonder if I can create a table that's big enough, welcoming enough, to include all those who are feeling hopeful about the election results and others who are feeling frightened and upset. And I've already kind of stated my case. If you're feeling frightened and upset by this last election, maybe you need a little bitch slap of reality to get over it. Because the other side lost as miserably last time. And there was do we survive it? Yeah, we do. The big question is, is our country surviving what happened? And it will. But there are some people and some families out there for whom the tension is so extremely high, it can be the best decision to call off a Thanksgiving dinner with extended family because they can't handle being together with people who think differently than they do. So, less than 3 weeks for some people doesn't offer a lot of time to heal, but an election it should. You just get over it and you move on. Now, last election, I didn't get over it because I disagreed with the outcome of the election and I thought there was dirty dealing going on. And I expressed that. But it didn't prevent me again from being with people that I love and care about. But for some families, sharing a time-honored, cherished ritual might be the first step toward creating a bridge or burning one. So here's some ideas that I've got here. You got to think of family. And by the way, this is in general. This isn't just over election results. You've got to think of your family as a stew pot. Consider that most of us live in a bubble. At work, in our neighborhoods, especially on social media. We surround ourselves with like-minded people. But family is a stew pot, and one of the few places where we'll be confronted with different points of view. And it's where many of us first really come to know and love someone who is different than we are. Maybe some of our families have straight members, they're straight overall, and they have a gay member of the family. Somebody who's come out, or a relative with a different religion, or one of the relatives who's married into a race or somebody of a race that you go, how can our member of our family marry somebody of color or somebody who's white or so on and so on, or from a different country? Why did Bobby get a Vietnamese bride? I don't understand it. So with all that stuff in mind, families are stew pots. Could Thanksgiving be the start of empathy, of being curious about a family member's unfathomable vote? Starting your inquiry with, I'm really curious about, or could you share with me, might open a conversation that you'll be glad you had. I am not one to back down from my opinions or make light of make my opinions lighthearted, but I am also somebody who strives to be diplomatic, especially with people I care about. And so that's what I like to do. What's Grumpy Stack saying here? I just saw the WTF. WTF, what is family? My sister's cousins, boyfriends, uncles, fathers, grandpa is gay. Yeah. And you and I, Grumpy, we say, so what? We don't care. Do what you want to do. Just don't push it on my 4-year-old. Don't push it on, I meant to say 4th grader. Don't push it on my little kids. Grumpy Stack says, I'm about as drunk as Camel Toe was for her clip sent out today. Yeah, I saw that. Oh, my goodness. Was Kamala, did she have a few nips before she did that little 30-second stint today? Oh, my goodness. Did you guys see that? I think, you know what I think is going to happen? This is as an aside. Do you know what I think is happening with Kamala Harris right now? I will bet you anything. I'd bet my left testicle that she was told from the time that they pushed Joe out and put her in, you are going to win. We are going to make sure you're going to win. And she probably had the worst campaign crew that ever existed. And they misspent the money. They had $1 billion come in that they misspent. They misspent $20 million more than that. That's a record for spending on an election. And it's a record that was spent and thrown out the window. As we're seeing breakdowns coming in on that as to where all that money went. So Kamala Harris, thinking she's got all this money to deal with, these weren't people, keep in mind, and this is something Kamala Harris, I think personally, no matter what you think of her as somebody who was running for office, she's got to deal with the fact that the country didn't want her after her people told her they did. She's got to deal with the fact that those that $1 billion worth of donations coming in weren't necessarily for Kamala Harris. They were to prevent Trump from getting the office. That's got to be a tough thing if you poured all that in, even though she was only in the campaign for 100 days. That's got to be a thing after you lose, where you're licking your wounds. You're embarrassed to show your face in public because you were goddamn convinced that you were winning, because all the people around you said you were, all the donors said you were, and then look what happened. And you lost. And so I almost don't blame her for hitting the bottle. You know what? There are more people in history that have done that for better reasons than losing this election. So I think Kamala Harris is probably absolutely humiliated by what happened in this election, because I believe she was fed a bill of goods from the beginning. And I'll bet you the people that pushed out Joe wish they'd have just left it alone or had put somebody else up in place. You tell me there wasn't a better candidate to put in place of Joe than the vice president. They waited too long. They did some stupid things. Their strategy was off, and they believed way too much in their own selves. And they were wrong. That's a tough row to hoe. So I hit the bottle all the time, says Scott Allen. Yeah, I just came from having a couple of pints myself, but I wasn't drowning any sorrows. I was just having good times talking with an old friend. So I walked in the door, and it's funny. I don't drink that much, but I walked in the door, and my 10-year-old sitting with my wife says, "Are you drunk?" I said, "No, I'm not drunk." I said, I have a pint or two in me, and that's it. And no, I'm not drunk. So what's this say? Daniel Craig says, "Admittedly, I'm testing out the new kegerator. Outstanding. I'd be doing that with you if I wasn't sitting here half the country away." So I'm poor. I hit the natty light. The natty light. I don't know what that is. Oh, natty light. What's natty? I don't even know if I know what that stuff is. Let's see. Ellie is not 9 or 10 years old. Yeah, you wouldn't think. So Sarah says, "I don't understand why you say she was humiliated. She tried to run for president and the people made a choice. There's no shame in that." Ideally, between you and I, Sarah, that's the way we would think. I would think that she was led to believe she deserved the role, and she was led by a golden ring in her nose by the people that probably told her, "You are going to win this," and she believed them. For whatever reason. I think she's humiliated, and that's why we didn't see much come out of her after the election. She just faded away so far. And I guarantee you there's probably not many people. I saw somebody that was one of her donors saying the donors have lost confidence in her because of the spending, the misspending, the misappropriation, the crew that she had. She said there's a lot of us that would not support her to run for dog catcher. So I think she's probably humiliated by that. I think she's humiliated by all of this because she believed erroneously what she was being told. And then she finds out she got all this build up to this. You're going to win. You're going to win. You're going to. She lost horribly. So, and there's a lot of reasons for that. The only way I think she would be humiliated personally is if she actually understood how poor a leader she would have made after the fact. If she looked at the way she talked during the campaign, the way she did no press conferences, other than those that she set up, her people set up, and made sure they could only ask certain questions. There was no open presser ever in the whole time she was running. The way she hid out from answering questions, the way she never did fully answer any questions. I think belies somebody who knew going in, I'm being told not to talk about these things for a reason. It's either one, they didn't have their plan put together yet. They only had superficialities, and they believed they deserved the role. And they had her convinced of that. And I think she came out of this election probably pretty embarrassed and pretty humiliated. That's my take on it, Sarah. We can talk about that a little later if you'd like. We can revisit that. So all of that was a sidebar to what I was talking about. But the question is, could Thanksgiving be the start of empathy? Being curious about family members. I'm curious about why you voted the way you did. Could you share with me what your thinking was? Now, see, I have a tough time doing that because I'm going to want to interject, well, that was pretty stupid, wasn't it? That's not building empathy. I get it. If that's too tall an order for you to do something like that, given that wine will be flowing and that such difficult conversations will be made more difficult in a big group setting, make Thanksgiving an opportunity to suggest a conversation at a later date. I'd love to talk with you about the election so that I can learn what's at the heart of your political beliefs. When can we do that? Love to do that sometime. Let's set that up. Let's do that. Today's not good because everybody else is around. And if they insist, well, then, the gloves come off and you can have that. But those are ways to start preventing there being a problem. Broaden the perspective of the whole thing to include history. This isn't the first time in history of our country that we've embroiled in these high-stakes conflicts and facing polarization after an election at Thanksgiving. Abraham Lincoln issued a proclamation for a national celebration of Thanksgiving in the depths of the Civil War in an effort to heal the wounds of the nation. Let's be thankful for what we have. During the Great Depression, Thanksgiving was set to fall on the 5th Thursday of the month, deemed too close to the holiday shopping season for retailers that were worried about sales. Roosevelt moved Thanksgiving to the 4th Thursday, with 32 states following a Democratic Thanksgiving and 16 adhering to a Republican Thanksgiving. There's even party divide on what day. So I wonder how families made sense of this. Did they have 2 turkey dinners or split family gatherings along political lines? Me, I'd have done them both. Hey, we got 2 holidays in here. So given the historical perspective, talking about politics through the lens of time travel might be less charged than talking about the current election. So when the kids know their family stories, they grow up to be more resilient, knowing that family members have survived and learned from one another's turbulent times can be very reassuring. I got really blown out about something yesterday with my daughter, my 13-year-old. And I yelled at her. Not yell at her like raging, I'm gonna, blah, blah, blah. I was mad. I was upset about something. And I had a nice talk with her after that, a nice historical talk about who I am. This is a little revealing, but many of you know this. I was sexually abused when I was a little kid. Now, one of the things I learned when I became aware of how that had affected me, I was already in my 30s. And I went to some counseling about that, learned some stuff about myself and so on. Talked about those things a few times on this show. But one of the things that I learned was when little kids, now this is a totally different topic, did not expect to talk about this, but I talked with my daughter about this last night. I went and I apologized for getting as mad as I did. And by mad, I just meant I was yelling. And I said, look, I'm sorry for the way I acted. I wanted to share something with you. And so one of the things I learned in counseling about kids who are sexually abused when they're little is that it changes something in their modes of operation, we would call it. And it changes the way they think about things, and they grow up with that thing being implanted in their brain as to how they're supposed to act. And one of the things that a therapist that I saw, a counselor, he was in my own office building where I had my studio way back in the early 90s. And I sat down, I talked with her several times. And when we got to talking about this stuff, she said, she stopped me at one point and she said, you're kind of a textbook picture of what happens with children who are sexually abused. She said they grow up doing certain things, and it doesn't come out till they're adults when they realize their modes of operation. And she said, for most kids that are sexually abused, what have they done? They tend to be perfectionists, neatniks. They want the house clean all the time. They don't want things out of place. And when they get out of place, or when somebody habitually doesn't contribute to keeping it in shape, it can have a tendency to come out in rage, in anger, because they're constantly striving to set to order the things that were put out of order when they were a child. Now, I didn't realize I had any of that. I was too cocky, too self-assured to believe any of that about myself until I learned that I did that kind of thing. And here I am at 64 years old and realizing, more than 30 years after learning this stuff, knowing that that's there in the back of my brain, it still comes out sometimes without realizing that I've tapped into it, or it's tapped into me. And I have to stop myself. If I don't catch it while I'm doing it, I can go off. And now the rage, I'm not talking about a berserker type of rage, I murdered my family type of rage. I'm not talking about that. It's this anger for no reason about the fact that the bread was left open and so it's drying out and it's all crusty because the last person who used it didn't put the mayo away, so the mayo went bad, or somebody didn't rinse their dish or pick up the wrapper on the floor that they dropped, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Dumb things. And those are things that the psyche will latch into and make bigger things out of than actually are. So I explained that to my daughter last night. Hey, this is some of what I go through, and I'm sorry that you had to you experience it from time to time. Sometimes, and I only bring all that up to say that when kids know their family's stories, they grow up to be more resilient themselves, and knowing that family members have survived and learned from other turbulent times. And that can be very reassuring for kids. There was something I learned about my mom. My mom hated taking us to the doctor. I mean, the doctor was the last thing on earth you would ever do. And you could have busted your arm and the bone sticking out of your arm because you got a compound fracture or whatever it might be. And mom would say, well, let's rinse that off. Rinse it off and put a Band-Aid over it. It'll be fine. You know, I'm talking in extremes, but that's the way my mom was. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I learned that her mother, my maternal grandmother, had been a drug addict. Think of a housewife in the 50s and in the early 60s, but a housewife primarily through the 50s, a Mrs. Cleaver type of a housewife, dress, apron, pearl necklace, but she was hooked on I think some over-the-counter meds and got into other stuff. And so she wasn't like this raging drug addict like you see on the street. She was a raging home housewife drug addict. And my mom said she used to see, my mom was up on a chair looking through the transom over the door and saw my grandmother, not to speak ill of the dead, but saw my grandmother taking a hammer and using the handle of the hammer to beat herself on the legs to create bruises so she could go to the doctor and said she hurt herself and needed pain meds. That type of thing. And she was plagued by that for the rest of her life. And my grandfather ended up divorcing her. That's my Jewish grandfather. Ended up divorcing her because of it. And so there are things we learn about our family. This is something I learned about my mom. Oh, that's why you didn't like doctors. And she still doesn't to this day. But she's gotten over that. It's not a hang up for her anymore. But that made sense. So when we learn about the things, our personal histories, even the negative stuff, they have a way of building resilience in us, in our kids. How about this at Thanksgiving? You could ask, who remembers the first vote they cast and who did you vote for? That could start an argument. At my family table, my grandfather, who I just the aforementioned here, he was basically a communist. I voted for Ronald Reagan the first time I cast a vote for a president in 1980. First time I was old enough to vote for a president. My grandfather, and even my mom at the time, was not she's conservative now, big Trump supporter now. Back then, she was dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, DFL, was bitching me out for driving me to the polls because my vote was just going to outcast hers. So, but you can ask those questions. Get a history going. Can you remember other times in history when you felt that the nation was polarized? Perhaps Nixon's 49-1 victory over George McGovern in 1972. How did you move forward then? Does anyone recall Thanksgiving 1963? Only 6 days after President Kennedy's assassination was that Thanksgiving. What was that like in your household? That came up in our household a lot because my birthday was the 23rd of November, and Kennedy was assassinated on the 22nd, on my third birthday, day before my third birthday. I remember it all happening. I just didn't know what it was at the time. Did anyone here have a holiday conversation with family during the Vietnam War? How many of your family members are getting older now, but went into the Vietnam War? I missed the Vietnam War by just a couple of years, the draft, myself. Does anyone have stories about their involvement in the civil rights movement or other significant human rights movements? So that's something you can look at. And through all of this and the differing opinions that might come up, how do you try to keep your equilibrium and everybody else's? Consider taking a break during the dinner to take some deep breaths or even consult an app. I wouldn't consult an app during dinner. I think that's a lame thing to do, frankly. But taking a break, let's all take a break to take a breather. I think you only do that if you have to. If it gets heated, that's maybe something to do. In through the nose, out through the mouth, you just go. I think I would be a better, hopefully, family leader in those instances to go, hey, everybody, it's getting a little heated. Let's eat. Let's eat. Let's take the angst down a little bit and talk about something else. That's about how I'd handle that with my family. And if anybody was so heated that they did not heed me, I might say, my brother, if you're having a problem with this, come on, give it up. If you can't, if you got to go, I understand. Let's sit down and enjoy. Let's be joyful together. So what about if you're hosting a dinner? You might want to send a group email ahead of time, setting an expectation that discourages conflict. You might ask family members to focus on what we feel thankful for, as long as it's not the outcome of the election. Or that we love, I'm thankful for the outcome. I'm thankful that scumbag didn't get elected, or something like that. Or what we love about our family. suggest that everyone switch seats between courses. I don't really go along with this as somebody else's list I'm giving you here. I don't know that I don't want to play musical chairs during dinner. We just want to sit there and eat and stuff our faces and talk and have a good time. Be provocative about creating a family-wide conversation. Last year, during arguably easier times, I invited my Thanksgiving guests to play a game aimed at creating one conversation around the table, giving everyone a chance to connect. That's something fun to do. You know, if your family has any closeness at all, by the way, and I'm going to say this, if your family has any closeness at all, your family should be able to get through this just fine. Keep conversation at the table civil. If the election is raised, you might ask these questions. Do you want to have this conversation right now while we're eating? Can we agree not to name, call, not to interrupt or use hot button words that are going to incite everybody? We don't have to have this while we're eating. We can retire after the dinner with our coffee and our wines or whatever and go to the other room. If you're able to bring up the election, you might take a moment to think of someone who's listened to you really openly and try to channel them as you ask in as open-hearted and curious a way as you can muster. I'd really like to understand what was the most important thing to you during the election. What in your life experience has made these beliefs so important to you? Now, I've asked those questions along the way to people. People that have absolutely hated Trump, people in my own family. And I've said, what is it that Trump did to you that makes you hate him so bad? I would really like to know a sincere thing. And usually the thing they bring up, like I mentioned already, a thing was brought up about, I don't remember what it was. And I was like, that's really their answer to that? That makes you hate the man? Makes no sense to me. So is there anything about the other party or the candidate that you admire? So, and the big primary thing to remember is don't forget the fun. Despite the seriousness that many of us are feeling right now, Thanksgiving should be an opportunity to gather and enjoy one another's company. And we are all thinking seriously whether your party or your ideology won the day in the election or lost the day in the election. Guess what? Every election, and it's so profound as to not be profound, there are winners and losers. Every time. And so you have to decide, what am I going to do? You know, if Trump would have lost this election for me personally, I would have had a problem with that. But I would have had to put up with the gloating from the other side. And I have done my very best to not gloat at anybody over the election. I poked a little fun at people who were, oh, my rights are absolutely gone now. I'm like, oh, yeah. What was the big thing? There was a big thing about some woman had said something about, well, women have just become property now. And that's where, if you follow my Facebook page, I put up, hey, since women are now property, is there going to be a chain store we can invest in? Anybody? And nobody, that's not funny. The only people who thought it was funny were the people that found that argument absolutely ridiculously stupid. Women are not going to become property. As a result, that is an extremism that is not founded anywhere in fact. Now, somebody I could be inviting and say, well, what is it that makes you think that's going to happen? I'd really like to know. And I've mentioned I had a gay friend that came in and got on my case about the election. I wasn't gloating. Just election night, I put up Trump won, or I put President Trump. I put popular and electoral vote won, House and Senate won. It's good to be an American. That's all I said. And I had people taking me to task. A gay friend of mine. Well, you don't know how this hurts us. And I said, and I've known this guy for 30 years. And I said, Well, maybe I don't know how it hurts you. How does this hurt you? What is going to happen to your, well, we're going to lose all our rights. And I said, are you going to lose the right to free speech? Are you going to lose your right to own and bear arms? Are you going to lose the right to unlawful searches and seizures? Are you going? And I went through the Bill of Rights, basically. I said, what rights are you losing? I said, you're trying to get extra rights because of where you are in life, what you believe about yourself. I said, help me understand what it is that's got you feeling the way you do, because it's a friend of mine. And he came back and just told me, well, you think you know everything and you're arrogant and all of this. And I said, no, dude. I said, all I was doing was stating my opinion the same way you are allowed to state yours right here now, too. And I invited him, come on this show. Let's talk about it. And he told me, I'll take a pass on that. You don't want to do that. But he never did articulate to me why he felt that Trump winning was a danger to his lifestyle, to his life, and people like him. So Wade Robertson here. I'm thankful for the outcome of the election. So am I. So am I, brother. What did Professor Bauer say? The best display of being right and the winner is the visage of victory. With a cocked smile, no words necessary. There you go. Yeah. And I could do that too. For me, sometimes I don't want people to interpret me as being arrogant about the election. I'm thankful for the election because I have reasons I think we should be. But that doesn't always translate, does it? So, take the time to play some classic games. Thanksgiving. They're easier. We do that all the time. We're always playing card games with my wife's family. Weird card games where you're using 5 decks of cards and blah, blah, blah. It's just, it can be wild and it's addicting. So when I think about this upcoming holiday tomorrow, I think of a Thanksgiving table in 1863 with a family whose 2 sons are both off at war. One's fighting for the Union and the other for the Confederate. I can't quite imagine how that dinner conversation transpired, but I do know that deep rifts across our country echoed in our families and are also an American tradition. Just as established as eating turkey and potatoes on the 4th Thursday of November. But having said all that, I think that there are things that we can do to stop things before they happen from getting out of hand. So if you're gathering with relatives whose politics are different, here's some tips I have for you. Remember I said I got 10 things you can do? This is where they come in. You ready for these? All right. There's no place like home for the holidays, and that may not necessarily be a good thing. In the wake of very contentious and divisive 2024 presidential election, the upcoming celebration of Thanksgiving and the ramp up of the winter holiday season could be a boon for some and a respite from the events of the larger world in the gathering of family and loved ones. So tomorrow, there's going to be people all over this country that are celebrating and some that are still boo-hooing into their wet tissues. Well, sorry, I'm not trying to make fun of that much. For those who make a study of people and their relationships to each other in an increasingly complex 21st century, there's choices that those who potentially fraught personal situations can make things to do and things to avoid. And that could help them and their families get through the time if there's division much more easily. And I do think that families that love each other, okay, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, families that love each other don't let things like elections divide them. Okay? There's something else going on. So, you do have to assess where you are with all of it. For those of us that feel strongly about the election's outcome, either way, and know that the people they would be spending the holiday with feel just as strongly, maybe in the other direction, take the time to honestly assess if you're ready to spend time together in this moment. Barely a few weeks after Election Day. And I have to say, even though I say that, that's an advised way to look at things. I'm going to say if you can't handle the outcome of an election, if it's bothered you so much that you cannot be with the people you love because they think differently, you have to take a deep inner look. It would be the same way for me the other way around. I'm not protesting at all. You talking to me, Rapid Dog? Are you talking to the people who say, I just can't be with my family because they voted for that guy? You know, whatever. Some people suggest taking a temporary break. Harvard, or was it Yale, Oxford, not Oxford, United States universities had safe rooms for people to go to and get a tissue and hug a teddy bear after the election. These are supposed to be adults, folks. We don't need to do that as an adult. You express it, you move on from it. You move on. You get things done. Don't miss the bigger picture about the holiday. It's about being with family. Set your boundaries. If you decide getting together is the way to go, but you know politics is still a dicey subject, make a goal of setting the holiday a politics-free zone. Easy enough to do. Will political conversation change anyone's mind? If there's no possibility of changing anyone's mind, then create a demilitarized zone and don't talk about it. Boom, that easy. Don't take the bait. That's another thing to do. Sometimes, despite the best efforts and intentions to keep the holiday gatherings politics and drama free, there's someone who's always got to say something, and they're gonna say it. In that case, avoid getting drawn into it. Don't take the hook. This is one of the most important things, and it's challenging. Think about what's going to happen after the holiday. Do you risk getting caught up in the moment and consider how it's going to have fallout? Don't feel you have to be there uninterrupted. It's okay to be interrupted. So there's all kinds of things, guys, that we can do for Thanksgiving to not let bother us if you're easily bothered by this stuff. My fight about religion instead of politics is Rapid Dog. There you go. I got to put that one up. Fight about religion, not politics. Boom. There it is. That's the best thing to do. Right? All right, folks. I'm done talking about this. We can talk about it more in the captain's cabin coming up next. Let's go to a break here. I want you all to stick around. If you can't, then go on your happy way. Have a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. But in the meantime, I want you all to live long and prosper. And let's move on into the next step here for the show. Everybody, stick around. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hi, my dad. So he can take me to Disneyland.
Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep,
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave. Well, and welcome to the Captain's Cabin, folks. Here it is, Thanksgiving Eve. It's 10:10 p.m. Central Standard Time. What's going on in your neck of the woods? What do you got? You got anything to add to this? You got things you want to talk about? This is your time, not just my time. So call in if you want to talk about these things. Otherwise, don't. And we won't. So what's on your minds, everybody? I appreciate your being here. You got the link. You want to talk about these things? Call in. Here we go. What are you thankful for? There it is. There's the link. Those of you over on Instagram and other places, it's good to see you there. Wow, a lot of you in over there tonight. John H.R. Piper, good to see you. And AJ AJ Guntz, good to see you. Burton and Stanley, that is a good friend of mine over there. Justin Chase Mullins. And Anutsi Jenis is there. And Felix is there. And a New Humanity Movement joined. All of you that joined over there in the Urgorgishiasimolia. Way at the very beginning, I saw you. Welcome. I'm glad you all checked it out tonight. If you're not still there, I'm glad you stopped by. And if you would like to join the chat, now it's a good time to do that. Here, I'm going to paste in the window. There is over on Instagram, there's the way you can call us on the show if you want to come on. And you can come over to the chat room over on the YouTube channel and join us over there. So, what else is going on with everybody? I kind of busted my nut there on the show. What do you got to talk about? What's Thanksgiving meant to you? And we'll just give this a few minutes. This is the after show. So you can join up and we'll talk casually. Otherwise, we won't. And I got a million things I could continue to talk about. I could take us into the all-night zone. But I want to see if you've got anything you want to add to the mix today. What's one of the most pressing things on your mind that you feel that you'd like to talk about, that you'd like to share with us, get our intake, our input, get our take on things, see what our listeners want to have to say? Hey, look who's here. It's JP.
Hey, how's it
How you
going?
doing, brother?
Oh, doing all right. Just hanging out here in Ohio with family.
Yeah. Oh, you're in Ohio.
Yeah. Drove up to see my grandpa and
Nice.
then see my aunt and a couple uncles and stuff like that. So
Where in Ohio are they?
So grandpa and his wife, he remarried after
Sure.
grandma had passed. So they live right by a town called Sardinia,
Okay.
which is
What
It's in-
major metro area are you nearby?
Cincinnati would probably be the
Cincinnati.
biggest one.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's where my dad lives,
Okay.
outside of Cincinnati. So
Yeah. So it's about 45 minutes.
that's
Something like
my
that.
dad he's out near Peebles, out near the Serpent Mounds,
Yeah.
or a little bit past him, maybe 25-minute further drive.
Yeah.
Past him. He's out
So
in New Vienna.
you talk about, the Serpent Mounds. My grandma on my mom's side, she lived out
She
in, yeah, right. Yeah. No, I'm not that old. She lived out in Hillsboro. So Hillsboro's right close to the Serpent Mounds.
This may be deja vu all over again. I think you and I may have talked about this once before, because I remember Hillsboro and my dad having said things about going into Hillsboro to get something.
Yeah.
So,
I seem to recall a conversation about that.
yeah. He's New Vienna. He's way out in the country. You look at him on the map, and then you get down onto the Google, the shots where you can look all around. It's all fields and woods and few farms. And so, yeah, he's out in the country.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, Grandma Marianne was kind of out in the country. She was outside of Hillsboro, but close enough that we all she's in Hillsboro.
got it.
Yeah.
So
So-
basically, if I was visiting my dad, you and I could probably go out for a pint or two.
Yeah. Yeah. Since you said he's closer to Cincinnati, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not too. I would say he's about 40 miles outside of Cincinnati.
Okay. Yeah, that's
kinda
about
east.
the same.
In a way. So
Yeah. So yeah. Realistically, we could link up for a pint if you were out.
yeah, we'd make that happen.
Yeah, we could
Scott Allen said he's here for the all-night zone.
we could we could slip over to Eastgate and get some Skyline, or
There you go.
or hit up White Castle.
The White Castle. There it is.
I would say Frisch's, but apparently all the Frisch's have closed down out here. The big boys.
Oh,
Yeah, I think the last one is closing soon or has closed. I guess, just poor management across the franchise in this area, and which is sad because that was always a staple of family visits. Was we got to go to Frisch's because Dad likes to get the fish sandwich because it was cod that they used, and all of that. And
I am all about White Castle. Now, we had one about 10 minutes away.
You and Harold and Kumar.
Yeah, Harold and Kumar. So I got no problems with White Castle. I rather like them. When Rainey and I first got together, on occasion, after going to the Irish pub on Tuesdays, we'd swing by the late night White Castle, which was the place, the drive-through to be seen at if you were coming from the bar. So, but Grumpy Stack says my aunt passed away last week. Sorry to hear that, Doug. My liberal cousins are around. Us being completely opposite sides of the political spectrum, had a great weekend. This country shouldn't be divided politically. And my family government wants us to fight. I say, fuck that.
Well, and that's the thing is if you kind of start digging into some of the things about certain the stickiest floors at 2 a.m. You're not wrong, Randolph. Yeah. No, but it's if you start looking at things. So have you read any of Pete Hegseth's books?
I have not, and I have wanted to buy them in the past, and I just haven't. They're on my list.
So War on Warriors,
I need to read.
War on Warriors on Audible. Like, I didn't pay anything for it when I went over there. Like, I didn't even use a credit. So the War on Warriors, if you check that one out,
I think I may have picked that up on Audible.
Yeah.
Come to think of it, after his appointment, I thought I need to read a couple of his books, and I thought I'll listen to them because I'm working on paintings and doing stuff like that. So
yeah, I then picked up War on the American Mind, and which is another one that he did where he really delves into kind of the educational system and the progressive ideologies and Marxist ideologies and things like that, and how they were changing things. He goes into a lot of that. I forget the name of the guy that he wrote the book with. But that's kind of a thing that they talk about is, the division.
Yes.
And they, I think it may be War on the American Mind where he talked about it, but I'm still listening to it. I started it before I came out here. One of the things that he does talk about in one of the books is how when the German Marxists, and stuff like that came to the U.S., like they basically, and you kind of start seeing that develop into the progressive, movement of the early 1900s and the 20s, kind of into the 30s. One of the things they talked about was the switch from how to divide people, and with the Bolsheviks and everything, it was in Russia, Eastern Europe, and all of that, it was very much class. You had class basically turned into class warfare. And how they got to the U.S. and they realized that we can't. Class warfare isn't going to work. The rich versus poor. All of that stuff. So they're like, we have to start looking at where is there that divide, and they kind of locked onto the fact that hey, we relatively recently, if you will. You know, we had gone through the Civil War over slavery. We had ended all of that. There was still, segregation issues. So look to race as being, one of the things where you can cause that divide,
Yes.
that class divide. And they just kind of evolve the thing that it is that they're trying to use as division, as a thing to create division. And they still use race, but it moved into other things. They kind of dig into that. It's interesting.
Well, I'm looking at some of his books right now, and I like to read books. I'm a person who likes to collect them, so I have hardcovers, thousands of them in my library. But I like to listen to books when I don't have time to sit down and read them. Reading is better for your mind, I think. But when I'm working, sometimes if I'm not just listening to music or radio, I like to be informed while I'm reading. So I put books in a list, and there's a couple I haven't bought yet. One was Pete Hegseth's Battle for the American Mind, Uprooting a Century of Miseducation. Yeah. And he has some good things to say about that. I could read what he's talking about. It's very interesting. I got to put on my glasses to do this because the type's a little small. But in the description of this book, it says, behind a smokescreen of preparing students for the new industrial economy, early progressives had political control in mind. America's original schools didn't just make kids memorize facts or learn skills. They taught them to think freely and arrive at wisdom. They assigned the classics, inspired love of God and country, and raised future citizens that changed the world forever. Today, after 16,000 hours of K-12 indoctrination, our kids come out of government schools hating America. They roll their eyes at religion, disdain our history. We spend more money on education than ever, but kids can barely read and write, let alone reason with discernment. Western culture's on the ropes. Kids are bored and aimless, flailing for purpose in a system that says racial and gender identity is everything. Battle for the American Mind by Pete Hegseth is the untold story of the progressive plan to neutralize the basis for our republic by removing the one ingredient that had sustained Western civilization for thousands of years. Pete Hegseth and David Goodwin explain why, no matter what political skirmishes conservatives win, progressives are winning the war and control the supply lines of future citizens. Reversing this reality will require parents to radically reorient their children's education. Even most homeschooling and Christian schooling are infused with progressive assumptions. We need to recover a lost philosophy of education, grounded in virtue and excellence, that can aim or arm future generations to fight for freedom. It's called classical Christian education. Now, Muslims might not agree with classical Christian education as a definition. Never heard of it? You're not alone. Battle for the American Mind is more than a book. It's a field guide for remaking school in the United States. We've seated our kids' minds to the left for far too long. This book gives patriotic parents the ammunition to join an insurgency that gives America a fighting chance. And so on. So that's one of his books. I've got that in my list to get. And the other one is, did you say you were reading The War on Warriors?
Yeah. I read that one. Well, I audiobooked, but yeah, I finished that, I guess, probably a day or two before starting the drive out here to Ohio and whatnot. So
okay. Reading it or listening to it? You listen to it.
Listening to it, yeah, and it's unabridged, so
that's
you're
good.
getting you're getting the whole
that.
thing. Yeah.
This says a description on that book's a little shorter than the last one. Pete Hegseth joined the army to fight extremists. Then that same army called him one. The military Pete joined 20 years ago was fiercely focused on lethality, competency, and color blindness. Today, our brass are following the rest of our country off the cliff of cultural chaos and weakness. Americans with common sense are fighting this on many fronts. But if we can't save the meritocracy of our military, we're definitely going to lose everything else. The War on Warriors uncovers the deep roots of our dysfunction, a society that's forgotten the men who take risks, cut through red tape, get their hands dirty. The only kind of men prepared to face the dangers that the left pretends don't exist. Unlike issues of education or taxes or crime, this problem doesn't have a zip code solution. We can't move away from it. We can't avoid it. We have only one Pentagon. Either we take it back or surrender it altogether. Combining his own war experiences, tales of outrage, and the incisive look at how the chain of command got so kinked, this book is the key to saving our warriors and winning future wars. The War on Warriors must be won by the good guys, because when the shooting really starts, they're the only ones who can save us. That's Pete Hegseth's book, The War on Warriors, which sounds also like a very good book. So,
yeah, it's pretty good. It's definitely interesting. There's some things, that where he has a harder stance on stuff than I probably do, but so there's a couple of things here and there where I kind of eye roll a little bit.
Sure.
And a lot of that's just due to my own situation with like my kids who both identify within the LGBTQ community kind of stuff and things like that, so like there's some things where it's like, for me, I'm a little like, okay, we can pump the brakes a little bit on that beat, but for the most part though, it's, there's a lot of stuff that's really spot on with it. Especially like when it gets in talking about like, lethality and where's the focus on, on things. And it's
Sure.
It's drifted left to center mass, in terms of, I guess, pun unintended with that, but, it's, he hits the nail on the head with a lot of things. And so it's definitely worth the read, and it gives you good insight into kind of how he thinks and looks at things with the military aspect, and it kind of reassured me in my thinking that while he doesn't have necessarily the executive level experience in terms of managing and operating a major machine
Right.
from that kind of level as Secretary of Defense.
Well, he doesn't have to do it alone. That's the beauty. He's got a lot of people
right.
to help him.
Exactly. He doesn't have to do it alone, but it's also one of those things where it's like, you get a guy who is in the trenches a lot more recently than a lot of the people at the higher levels have been, and so you don't have as much of a intrusion of politics into that kind of stuff, which it's like, they say if you want to understand war, you have to understand politics, and it's true.
Sense.
War is the war is the bloody instrument of politics. When
y'all.
Right, when politics in the normal sense has failed, that is where war enters the chat, so to speak. So in certain ways it does go hand in hand, but there's a lot of things where it's you got to get the politics out of it, and I think stand a good chance of seeing a lot of that being pulled back from the politics being pulled back from the actual war fighting and the war fighter with Hegseth in there, because he hasn't been inundated. Yeah, he's been a pundit on Fox, but that's different than being someone working within the political machine and being
Right.
steeped and bathed in all of that mess.
Sure.
Like a lot of your political appointees, such as SecDef, or even Secretary of the Army, Secretary of the Air Force, etc., can be.
Right.
So it might be that kind of refreshing, jab to the veins that we that we need, that infusion of something different that we need. So,
and I think we do. I want to see him. Yeah.
Oh God.
Oh God. Don't call him that. It just goes to his head.
Yes, JP.
Oh Lord.
Oh God.
Pray for this morning.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
How you doing, Professor?
I saw what you did last night, JP. Naughty, naughty.
What did I did last night other than crash in my bed at my grandparents' house?
Well, I heard some of what you guys were talking about, and
So Krampus can't find him.
I think, for me, what it really gets down to, and I think you might resonate with this, Jason, is what we're seeing is the return of meritocracy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Because the meritocracy is critical, especially in something like the military. It's when the war ends, who the rabbit dog? I'm not even going to acknowledge that comment beyond acknowledging that I'm not going to acknowledge it.
I think the bottom line is what we've seen was a rush to mediocrity, and that has been basically the cry and the call from all of those who have gone on ad nauseum about all these different changes in psychology, thinking that, to have a conversation with someone who can't tell you what a woman is a waste of time.
It is. Frankly,
to have a conversation with somebody who says there are all these different delineations that are victims of these victimizers, and creating all these classes, all these subclasses of classes, has turned out to be, it's caused more mental illness than it has added a positive contribution to society.
Well, and it's just sown more division too. It gives you one more fracturing point. And
the oddity to me, and this is, I just keep finding these every time one of them, it's like whack-a-mole. They pop their heads up and they start spouting off some nonsense that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but it's all emotional and a lot of energy in it. But I keep seeing the cognitive dissonance of not realizing what the hell they're saying and how antithetical to what they're saying their actions are. And at the core of this whole transformation from mediocrity to meritocracy, back to being accountable, having responsibility for one's actions, for and having transparency on oneself, is they've gone after this whole ideology thing, and it's all about the individual and all the little quirks and caveats that make up whatever that carbon unit is. Well, that's the individual. What is it that you're missing about the individuality that you're parroting and trying to put some kind of new issue and energy into that's different from it being the individual? So they have gone way overboard, and they've got the big cosmic slap upside the head, and that watching that unfold is clearly highly entertaining, but it's also disturbing on a number of levels to realize, how did these people get this way? How did so many people believe so many things that aren't true? And how did they become so emotionally and psychologically, mentally and physically committed?
Is there an
and
easy
involved?
answer to that? Because I could give a pet answer. What do you think is the quickest answer to that? What's the easy answer? How did so many people get so deceived or believe so many disparate, weird things that when you break them down have no real basis in anything that's factual at all?
Well, I tell you what, I think if you pick up War for the American Mind, you might gain some better insight into how that happened.
Well, here's an interesting little tidbit that I just learned that it tracks perfectly with what I'm saying and what my observation has been.
Yeah.
We were talking about right after the election how there was this interesting correlation, and Scotty, we tossed tarot on this, and we got a clear indication that what we
did.
thought was going to happen actually did happen.
Yeah.
And one of those things was that included in that was the return of Pluto, which, forget about all these scientists that, they can't figure out what a rock
I didn't
is.
get Pluto out of the cards, but I got.
No, not, yeah. You didn't have Pluto, but
the cards.
we are currently right now in the return of the 245-ish year cycle of Pluto. The last time Pluto was in this position was 1776.
See, and that's an interesting correlation. The question it starts to make me ask is, how do we understand or know that planets actually change the way things go in our minds, in humanity, in this planet? It's that I have to surrender my belief system to the belief or the trust that astrology or astrological things govern the way things happen, or at least predict them. Not govern them; they predict them accurately.
Well, they more accurately, Scotty,
on all that. So,
well, really, the way I look at it and justify it within my mind is that, number one, the longest, most detailed set of data that we have as humans is astronomy, which then became astrology. Every civilization looked at the heavens and they charted and they watched the movement of the heavenly bodies, not only our planets, but also the stars, right? Constellations, all of that. Well, that's the most documented thing we have. Goes back tens of thousands of years. There are people doing pictographs and carvings on rock walls and paintings in France and in caves and all this, depicting these astrological and astronomical, because you can't have astrology without astronomy, right?
Right.
And that's correct, Rapid Dog. you know that Elon has definitely got himself a couple of chart readers, and Trump does too. But that's too woo for the normies, and the normies are go, oh, that's that stuff, because again of more propaganda. But the correlations of things, the reason that this data is so dependable is that there's all this history of charting it. Every time Mars was in a certain position, there was a tendency for flare-ups and wars. Every time Jupiter is in a certain position, when there are conjunctions and trines and oppositions and squares and all these different things are simply what they've done is they've mapped the the cycles of the energetic entities and what they do when they are in certain positions. That's all it really is. It's a guide. It's like it's like having a weather forecast.
We know who Reagan was, Grumpy Stack.
Yeah.
We know who Reagan was.
We know the Reaganists. So anyway, the reason that this is important is because what you do is you do exactly what we're doing now. And to me, this is a very definitive and very clear empirical evidence of something related to the energies of the cosmos and how that translates to below.
What's the object you're talking about?
Pluto? Well, okay. So,
okay.
So Pluto's return now, the last time it happened was when we became a country.
Yes.
We will be celebrating our 250th
which further
anniversary
just
of becoming.
proves my theory. Pluto was big enough for your mom. All right.
There it is.
That's why it's called Uranus and not Uranus, because if it's Uranus, you're definitely going to find some Klingons. Now,
There it is.
now, so this is an empirical, real-time.
That's to be a planet, by the way,
evidentiary-
audience. Get your mind out of the gutter.
This
Pluto
is
was big enough for your mom to be a planet. All right.
This is an
head
empirical
like a planet.
evidentiary. This is an empirical evidentiary set of data
That's what she said.
It gives validity to what is it that happens when these planets are in different positions. Well, the correlation with this little tiny rock that the scientists can't figure out what the hell they want to do with it. The fact that the last time it was where it was, we became a country, and now it's back, and we have just saved our country literally from the ash heap on the edge of the cliff.
Let me ask you a question about that specifically. It's not to nitpick or anything. I'm not doubting
Pick
it.
away.
I'm just listening. If Pluto was here during the American Revolution, what year did you say that happened? And did it correlate with an event other than the American Revolution didn't happen like the day, oh, there's Pluto Revolution. It happened when? During a whole set of years, or
Yes.
what's the detailing on that?
So keep in mind that the distance that we're talking about, when it takes 240 years for Pluto to make its complete return around the helical model, we are not in an equatorial model of the solar system. The sun is a comet, and we are trailing behind it in a helical model. Okay.
Okay.
And that's where a lot of the scientists get all their shit wrong, because they keep thinking they're missing what it actually is, and for a whole bunch of reasons, basically looking for the wrong things in the wrong places for the wrong reasons.
Okay.
But when you have these periods, it's like when Mercury goes retrograde, you have a shadow period before and you have a shadow period after. That means that the energies are not as intense when it's in its direct position, but the energy is still involved. It still has an impact. So 240-year orbit for Pluto. Yeah, you could put 5 years, 10 years on one side and 10 years on the other, and you're going to have the influence. So during a 20-year period, easily, you're going to have the influence of where it would of its maximum opposition or its maximum point.
Okay.
And that's just physics. I mean, it's just logic. So the 1776 was when we, signed all this shit, right? Or at least got it started.
Right.
What was happening 10 years before that? Franklin, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, all these cats they were getting their shit going on. And you know where they were doing it? They were doing it in the Masonic. They were doing it in the Masonic pubs.
Yes.
So here's the point. The piece that I just found out that I didn't realize that I found very correlative to this time. So we were talking about how we got the Pluto return. There's correlations of the birth of the country, and now we're celebrating 250 years. There are certain energies and individuals and the characteristics of both times that are very corollary. You can see how we have basically we saved our ass, and we saved the planet for that matter.
Yes,
by people getting out and saying, "Hey,
well,
it wasn't an election."
I wouldn't say we've saved anything yet, Professor.
Oh, it's happening big time.
We still have idiots. We still have idiots at the wheel who are poking bears and fueling things that could really mess things over between now and January 20th.
That's true, but look around, Jason. Everybody's lining up. Everybody's starting to fly right. Term, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff where people are just deciding, well, I think this is probably going to be a lot different than we anticipated. The previous plans are probably not going to work. We might as well try to rethink what the fuck we're doing because we missed this completely.
You two go for a second. I'll be
So here's an interesting correlation. Did you know that both Jefferson and Adams they didn't get along, right?
Right.
They had some issues, and
Yeah.
but
they were friends and then had a big falling out, and then they like died within a day of each other.
Yeah, well, that's questionable, but yeah,
There was the whole letter writing thing as they reconnected, and then yeah.
But did you know this? Did you know this?
Hmm.
They each owned a newspaper. In fact, Franklin not only had his own newspaper, but he had 14 sock puppets.
Right. Yeah.
He was writing under all kinds of pseudonyms.
Franklin was Poor Richard's Almanac.
He was even having arguments with himself in his own publication.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Now,
man, imagine that arguing a topic from both sides.
Right.
It's like playing chess with yourself.
So Jefferson and Adams also had their own newspapers in which they used to trash the shit out of the other.
Right.
And I heard that and I went, wait a minute, there's another correlation to today. You've got all these billionaires or these people with all these publications, and they basically have them to go trash the other guy, or at least in some more civilized, more advanced way, but it's still the same model. Yeah. So you got Musk with X, you got Bezos with Washington Post, you got the Mexican guy, Carlos, whatever his name is, Slim, owning New York Times. And so you have all these people who have their own publications, which are basically nothing but propaganda. Propaganda has been the mainstream.
The only one that's not is friggin' X.
Right?
That's
everybody going there. Yeah, everybody can go in there and trash shit out of each other. Have you seen what's going on at Blue Sky?
No, I have not.
It's basically a great big pool of liberals that are just crying all over the place, bitching at each other.
So which Blue Sky is that like? Is that
that's the liberal equivalent? It's a liberal equivalent of X.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know what they call their posts? Skeets.
No, they don't.
Are these people? Did anybody hire a cogent, thinking, heterosexual, testosterone-based carbon unit and invite them to the meetings?
Evidently not. Or they have a troll from within. It's like these guys are so wrapped around the axle and all this stuff that they're functionally stupid. Let's see if I can. Within. Let's call them skeets, guys. Yeah, let's.
So the CEO came out last week and was on an interview, and she had to admit that they're having so many problems. A year ago they had maybe 10,000 complaints or issues a month.
Yeah.
And last month they had 340,000. And they went, "Oh, we didn't see this coming." Well, and it's all a bunch of libs over there causing all the trouble. So,
Mary,
I mean, if you don't see enough of it just in what's left of whatever is of the propaganda mockingbird media, it's an interesting place to go.
Oh my goodness.
Time. But the bottom line, gentlemen, we are in a new age. It has arrived hard. It's stepped up and it's stepped on everything. And it said, here's the way it's going to be going forward.
Yeah.
And it was so definitive, so declarative.
You know,
there isn't any the only questions that are going on are in the minds of the people who didn't see it coming and were sideswiped by it.
You know what strikes me,
an astounding amount of confusion being displayed by these people from my perspective.
What strikes me as very interesting is all these, you talk about the news media outlets the legacy media, and the way that they really position themselves to be the mouthpieces for the more progressive left, and how you are seeing them now doing the flip-flopping, not total flip-flopping, like, wow, I was so wrong, and we're doing. It's just they're starting to mouth the other side of the coin a little differently, or like it's been so much ado about it. Joe Scarborough, going to the White House to meet with Trump, he and his wife, who broadcast, I can't even think of her name, on MSNBC, caustically against Trump and his Hitlerism and Nazism that he's going to bring to the country. And yet they're one of the first ones from the media down there to meet with him to make nice.
Do you remember that Scarborough was a big Trump supporter? He started off as a Repub, and he apparently, the story is going around that he thought he was going to be Trump's VP pick in the 2016 race, and when he didn't get it, that's when he had some butt hurt, and he went off and just went off the edge.
It's kind of funny how that works.
It is.
You see a lot of these guys and gals and whoever where it's like, yeah, I'm a big supporter, and then I don't perform up to standard or whatever, and then get, fired, laid off, whatever. And then it just turns into like, fuck this guy, he's Hitler, he's the worst thing that ever. Like, it's just odd that always happens that way. That it's the people who got fired that are like,
It's not odd, it's nature. That's just the way that
it's just the way it is.
And if you noticed,
I don't know if I've ever been fired. It's been like I
Trump.
probably deserved it. I can't think of the last time I was fired. But
have you noticed how many people trash Trump that are now surrounding him and on his team?
Yes. I have noticed that, and I've noticed this shift in the media. I've noticed. Now, what do you think about? Speaking of that, my mind's going here right away. About Elon Musk, the talk of him buying MSNBC.
Well, I think it would be brilliant.
That would be awesome.
I do too.
And the thing is,
what a giant middle finger to the media would that be?
It would be they've already put all the nails in their coffin. It would be the final spade of dirt thrown on the grave.
I would love to see that happen.
I think what we're seeing is the transformative disruption of all of things, a great majority of people having an awareness, an awakening, and an awareness from that awakening that all of the shit they thought was true is bullshit. At least 90+% of it. And they're starting to see that the information to prove said bullshit is coming out in spades. It's fucking everywhere. And yes, you have to use discernment. Yes, you have to, use your own bullshit meter and make sure that you're not getting sucked into it. But the opportunity to avoid that is unlike none other. I mean, there are more people doing credible investigative journalism. And the key thing is credibility, because what do you get when you have a meritocracy? You get credibility, right? Yep. So what's happening is the credibility factor is now the thing that people are starting to find is one of their main filters. If you're trying to sort through the tsunami of shit and the deluge of data, and you got to figure out a way to do that effectively, or it's going to bury you.
In case anybody doesn't recognize the word or doesn't know what he means when he says meritocracy, just break the word down. Meritocracy. It's building on the basis and the foundation of merit. Of if either of you two have a better definition than that, I'm trying to put it in the simplest of terms.
Well, the key
know what that means. It means that you're building
based off of your ability and performance. That puts you in the position to be able to
the term merit, the root merit means accomplishment.
Yeah, accomplishment.
Okay. And then the various ways in which that accomplishment comes about. It can be through recurring things. It can be one thing. It can be whatever, a behavior. It can be all kinds of things. But
Sure.
when you have a continuous accomplishment, you get merit for that, and that merit gives you credibility.
Yeah.
And because you have done all of that and it's been seen and acknowledged by others, it is transparent. So we're having this big shift into these simplistic things of just the way in which the cosmos functions. And people are getting an opportunity to actually start looking at things and examining. And
Joe
making
Rogan
decisions.
interviewing Trump was a pinnacle in history?
Is that what you mean, Claudette? Pinnacle?
Or do you mean pinnacle?
Pinnacle.
Pinnacle, I think, is what you're trying to say there.
Yeah, because Pinnacle's a card game.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I was trying to make that out too.
She's
It wasn't
from
quite sure.
Canada. They might pronounce it different up there,
Eh?
you know. Hey, it's a little
Pinnacle.
project.
Pinnacle, I think, is what you meant.
It's about. But
Go and get some of their Timmy Hortons there, you know.
speaking of the MSNBC Musk purchase,
Yes.
I saw a bunch of memes. One of them I really liked was MXBC.
Nice. That would be nice.
But I think what we're going to see is this, and there's been a lot of people starting to talk about it now. But you know how the media, this mockingbird propaganda media, is just lost all credibility because it pushed a bunch of shit that turned out to be not so.
Mm.
They fulfilled that old Ma Clampett line of them doing the accusing are usually the ones doing the doing. So
words of Ma Clampett to live by.
right. So, but I
When
think
you're right, you're right.
I think what we're going to see is the breakout of this just continually building alternate media, independent media that's just been like what we're doing here. The tech has gotten to the point to where you can have a podcast in your bathroom and get 1 million views and be a star. So yeah, Claudette, we got you. So what I think we're going to see, the first poke into the normie mainstream feeds of this independent media in the White House briefings.
Yes.
Can you imagine Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan and Russell Brand in the briefing? Alex Jones. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I that to me would be the most, not only clearly entertaining, but it would be the most substantive press briefing. And this woman, I can't think of her name, Lauren, I think, that got selected as the press secretary.
Oh,
I've heard her talk, and she is a fucking bulldog. I mean,
I don't know. I would have a hard time with anything with Alex Jones. Just look, I'm not saying there hasn't been things that he's been right on, but there's a lot of weird stuff that comes out of his mouth too.
There's not. Alex Jones hasn't been tabbed by Trump to do something in the cabinet.
Well, that's what was it?
Government?
he was one of the first names floated for the press secretary position.
Oh, really?
Oh, God.
Which
I'm going to have to come around to you on that, but
Which
would have we've got this covered.
A revenge floating of an idea. Like, it's like, let's do this just to piss them off. That's what that sounds
that would
like.
be, one of the things I found is watching Jean-Pierre, what the heck's KJP, Corinne Jean-Pierre, watching her go down out of the picture is a pleasure. She had to be, she either was somebody who is so, how to put it, she lied the way she did because she didn't believe she was lying, or she was somebody that was so dumb she didn't realize how much she was lying. It's one of the two. I'm gonna
lean towards the former because when you strain the way she has to strain to get out
Oh.
an answer, it's not just that if
It's
she
not that you're trying
believed
to
it,
think of what. Yeah.
if she believed it, she'd just go right off the script.
Right.
But she can't. There's fucking Peter Ducey causes more cognitive clicks and
Oh my
tilts
God. I
in
love
her
it.
and
I
it's
love
just
watching him.
Oh,
I mean,
phenomenal.
it is a case study and just excellent communication and being able to get somebody to
Yes.
expose themselves.
Yeah.
But anyway,
God,
I think
she was in,
I think we're
horrible,
going to
horrible.
see. I wouldn't be surprised. And I don't know if you guys heard this. Did you hear where Stallone and Hogan are going to head up the National Fitness Department?
Oh, nice.
It'd be interesting.
It's fine because they're both
Brother.
in decent shape, you know.
Decent shape. They're way older. They're 10 years plus older than us. And these guys are out lifting tires and doing movies and shit.
Yeah, I'm looking at Hulk Hogan. How old is he? He's got to be in his mid-70s.
Yeah.
And that dude is
He's
ripped.
jacked. He's jacked. And then you've got Bobby Kennedy. He's jacked.
Yeah, he's jacked too.
Right.
I love it when he first came out showing his workouts outside like a Venice Beach type of a I'm just gonna lift some weights out here in my backyard.
I'm just going out here and lift some weights, and he's throwing around. Like,
yes,
fuck, okay.
dude. Yeah,
Beware the old man strength.
I guess.
Yeah. So I'm feeling I have got more optimism. In fact, I'm starting a new secret society, and we will be taking
Does it have
applications.
decoder rings?
Decoder rings and
Yes.
shoe phones, and whether the video watches from Dick Tracy, and we're going to call ourselves the Optimati.
The Optimati.
Mm.
Play on optimism. Play on optics.
Yes.
Play on
on optimism. We're going to replace the Illuminati with the Optimati.
Well, that's sweet.
And it's going to be based on all of the Ethereum and Materium and the wandering and the woo. So, Jason, I expect you to be the first applicant to sign up and go for the full course.
And for wandering in the woo.
Yes.
Woo! Hello. And on that note, we're going to end.
A course that's going to be taught by Ric Flair? Is that?
Well, actually,
wandering in the woo.
Actually, I'm not supposed to let it out, but I think I may have Fabio.
I'm not supposed to let it out, but it is really a
Fabio.
secret society.
I'm going to bring Fabio back and reprise his greatness.
Right on. Well, guys, thank you for being with me tonight. I got to wrap this show.
God, I thought I'd never get out of here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. This made it fun. And one of these days, when I get younger again, we'll do this all night. So,
well, I think for the holidays we should do.
We should
we should revise the boys measuring bottles.
Oh yes, yes, we need to do that. So coming up, let's plan it, and then we'll make it impromptu when it happens. All right, guys, thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure,
Professor. Always amazing having you here. I'm glad you stopped by.
Hey, there's an opening. I just kind of step in and just let it out.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Everybody have an awesome holiday. Enjoy it. And, you know, you don't have to put up with any of the stuff.
Nah.
Just look, just smile and know inside that you won. And and they have to go through it. And all you got to do is just be quiet and smile and go, mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just let them go. They will wear themselves out. And the next thing you know, there's more pie for you.
And as they go and they're sweating on their upper lip as they're yelling, ask them to pass the yams.
That's right.
All right.
Send me the gravy boat.
All right, Professor, you have a good Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
See you, brother. And Jason, you have a great Thanksgiving with your
Same to
grandparents
you.
and other family. And I will talk to you soon, brother.
All
Thanks
right.
for
Sounds
being
good. Take care.
See ya. Everybody else, thank you for being here. I appreciate your spending your time with me the night before Thanksgiving. And we'll do this again maybe Friday. We'll see how Friday goes. And it could be a wild whirlwind of a day for me. We'll see if I'm pretty sure we'll be here regular time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So everybody, thanks for being around. Thanks for being here. Live long and prosper. Happy Thanksgiving.